Welcome to our fireside chat session, Buyer's Guide to Conversational AI Platforms. My name is Kan Bhargav. I'm head of AI research at Avamo. I'm joined today by a couple of special guests. Sriram Chakravarti is the founder and CTO at Avamo. Sriram brings in more than 15 years of engineering experience in designing massively scalable distributed software. Prior to Avamo, he was vice president of products for social computing division at TIBCO, where he was responsible for building Tibber, TIBCO's SaaS-based social computing platform. Joining Sriram today is Dale Shumel, research vice president for IDC's Conversational Artificial Intelligence and Intelligent Knowledge Discovery Research. Dave has over 25 years of experience working in the fields of artificial intelligence, enterprise search, information access, and content analytics. Prior to IDC, he was vice president of product strategy at Jania, a provider of semantic analysis tools and solutions. The topic today is all about how organizations looking for AI-based conversational solutions in order to improve customer experience and employee self-service have questions around use case prioritization, business case creation, and vendor selections, among other things. As we move ahead into this session, we will answer these questions and provide some actionable insights on how to approach conversational AI solutions. Without further ado, let me get started, but one last bit. We will have a Q&A session with Dave and Sriram towards the back end of the session. Please feel free to send across your questions as you have them over the chat, and I'll direct them appropriately. All right, let's begin. Sriram, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kan. Thanks for the introduction. And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fireside Chat. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are very excited to have Dave Shumel from IDC with us today. Dave brings, many years of experience in conversational AI. And, it's a great opportunity that we have to really tap into his collective knowledge that he has collected over a period of time and really kind of, ask him a few questions about the space. So I'll start off, Dave, by, first talking about, conversational AI. And especially in the last 24 months, we have seen some tremendous increase in terms of organization adopting conversational AI, the kinds of use cases that we are seeing across customers, across partners, as well as employee self-service. So the first question that I wanted to ask you is, how is conversational AI driving the automation agenda for the enterprise?
Well, thanks, Sriram and Scan. Thanks for having me on today. I think conversational AI is really something that a lot of organizations are looking at or have been looking at. IDC undertakes a number of surveys every year, and we have something called an AI strategy view survey that we did in April of 2021. And it was essentially a worldwide survey of 2,000, Fortune 500 organizations, on a worldwide basis. And as part of that survey, we identified that almost 80% of the respondents either are deploying or have deployed some kind of conversational AI and virtual agent. What we're seeing in the marketplace today is that organizations are really starting to make use of conversational AI in place of a lot of more traditional technology. So for many years, there's been things like interactive voice response systems, there's been menu-based, kinds of phone systems. There are lots of different types of web-based systems. And we're seeing a lot of those being transitioned into conversational AI solutions where, AI is really the way that people are interacting with the system. And the advantage here is that a lot of organizations are really finding that conversational AI is really able to handle a large percentage of their calls or inquiries or things along that line, and we're seeing a lot of interest from that standpoint. So and specifically you asked the question about how is it reflecting our automation. What IDC does is we have an AI maturity index, and we've surveyed some of these what we call AI disruptors, which are kind of at the highest level of AI and automation maturity, as opposed to the AI laggards, which are the folks that aren't doing that. What we're finding is that those organizations, working with conversational AI and natural language processing, 40% of those organizations are undertaking that, while the laggards are only undertaking 3%. Now, interestingly enough, if you look up at the next one, chatbots and virtual agents, we have over 50% of the AI disruptors saying that they put those kind of chatbots or virtual agents into place as well. And if you look at the blended technologies, the blended approach, where organizations are using machine learning, they're using virtual agents, they're using NLP and conversational AI. In some cases, they're using robotic process automation to automate certain business processes based on those conversations. In all those kinds of cases, it's almost 70% or over 70% are actually doing those for the most mature organizations. So the way we are reading this, result from the survey is that, those organizations that are really undertaking and making use of automation and are what we consider to be those, AI disruptors, the most mature level organizations, are really, really making heavy use of conversational AI.
Yeah, it's really interesting stats.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And then, a little bit more, if we dive in a little bit more into that strategy view survey, I mentioned that we had 78% of the global 2000 are deploying those virtual agents. Of those 78%, 50% were in North America, 30% were in Asia Pacific, and 20% were in EMEA. We've really seen North America just kind of taking off with conversational AI. Lots of organizations are really adopting that, and that is showing in this kind of geographic adoption, slide, if you will. Now, on the other side of things, there's still that 22% that actually haven't done anything with conversational AI, and so we wanted to find out, well, what are the problems? What are some of the things preventing them from adopting conversational AI? Almost 40% indicated that cost is a big issue still. And I think the price is coming down on conversational AI solutions, and people are developing more cost-effective solutions, but I don't think we're quite there yet where it's ubiquitous, if you will. Other area is the lack of talent. Over the past 3 or 4 years, or even 5 years ago, when conversational AI got started, it was really required software developers, Python developers, natural language processing experts, and things like that. And a lot of people didn't have that kind of talent. That's changing, and I think, as you well know, that we're starting to see the, areas where we're seeing codeless or no code type applications, and predefined natural language processing to pick up those, intents and language capabilities and things like that that people are dealing with. And then, last but not least is, these conversational AI solutions are really only as good as the data that they're providing back to the end user. So building the right knowledge base, building the right set of data to answer people's questions and help them through the process, whatever that process may be, that's an important part of this. And we're seeing a lot of organizations that are still stumbling around that aspect as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, those are great insights, Dave. I think the lack of talent and data integrations are really good points. We've seen this, even in the conversations that we've been having. For instance, I was talking to the CIO of a large healthcare organization, and given the amount of pressure that they are in, one of the main things that they were asking us is, hey, what kind of resourcing do you need from us? And the more we were able to kind of show tooling that really reduced the amount of time and effort, as well as reusable skills, as we call them, it was a big, it was big deal for them, because they just don't have those kinds of resources in-house. And with all the other things going on, simplifying what it takes to deploy these kinds of intelligent virtual assistants, and also tying this back in, the data integration part, those are absolutely critical. Those are some really good insights there.
Yeah, no, and I understand exactly where your customer was talking about. Organizations that can essentially reduce the process of building these conversational AI solutions from many months and years into weeks and days, with a lot of tools like you're talking about, pre-built capabilities and things like that. It really helps to advance the cause for putting these solutions into place more quickly and easily.
Yep. Great. This is a nice segue into the next topic that I had in mind. And IDC has just recently released their MarketScape for conversational AI platforms. And I know, Dave, you were leading the effort on the research on this MarketScape. I know you mentioned to me last time that you talked about 40 odd enterprise customers about their views on conversational AI, how they're adopting it. And with 200 plus vendors in the space, I'm sure this would have been a daunting task for you to kind of put this MarketScape together. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of what kind of capabilities were you deciding were critical for your MarketScape, as well as what kind of business metrics were essential for vendors to hit before they showed up on the MarketScape. I'd love to hear your thought process in terms of how IDC put this together.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So as you mentioned, we got started on this conversational AI MarketScape last January. So essentially a year ago at this point. Wow. And what we really wanted to do was dive into understand, those capabilities that buyers were actually interested in looking for. We actually had a lot of thoughts based on our discussions with enterprise organizations and discussions with vendors and things like that. But we really wanted to understand, what people would want in kind of that ideal vendor, if you will. All right. So, obviously we wanted to look at things like, do they have the tools? Do they have the APIs? If somebody actually has software developers and they want to dig into it at the API level, can they do that? So that was one of the criteria. The other criteria is, well, let's say they don't have those people, or they only have a very few of them. Are there pre-built or pre-built templates and language capabilities and things like that for certain use cases? For example, is there a customer service use case, that has a pre-built set of templates for, say, the healthcare industry, as you were just mentioning, for example? Do they have templates for, maybe other types of use cases? Maybe it might be IT automation, it might be human resources, it might be customer service. It might be sales and marketing, so the ability to have not only the tools and APIs, but also the pre-built and pre-built solutions was pretty important. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I mentioned, having that data integration and having that knowledge base is very important. So does the solution have tools for helping you build that knowledge base, or collecting that knowledge from different sources, whether that be, customer service logs, or whether it be frequently asked questions, documents, or, can it be a repair manual or something like that? Can you collect that information and put that into a knowledge base that you can use for question and answer? Obviously, the channel support is very important. Today, organizations, and end users are looking to interact with these solutions on a variety of levels. Sometimes it might be through a website. Sometimes it might be through a voice or over a phone. Sometimes it might be through, a Slack channel or a Facebook Messenger channel. And sometimes it might be simply a text message. So, being able to support all those channels was actually, kind of important. And then, I mentioned those pre-built templates and virtual assistants as a quick starting point. A lot of organizations that we talk to like the idea of having starting points, to actually develop their own solution on top of, rather than having to start from scratch. And I also have to talk about, at the end of the day, people have to pay for this solution. So what kinds of methodologies are available to help, people pay for it? Do they have to pay by the conversation? Do they have to pay, by the number of simultaneous conversational agents? Do they have to pay for it? How do they pay for that? And what works for that particular organization? And then, last but not least, I think I talked about the APIs and the pre-built solutions. That's because, you want to have your subject matter experts and your business analysts and your business users involved in the solution development. So, in that particular case, those are the people who actually know what the actual use case is about. And in those particular cases, you want to have them as part of your team. And then the other question is, do you need a software development staff? Are you going to develop something so custom that, it requires Python developers or C++ developers, or can you just get away with, using a low code or no code interface if the vendor offers that? So, those are some of the considerations that we looked at. As you mentioned, we talked to over 40 customers, and we talked to dozens of organizations, some dozens of vendors looking at this. And we established, criteria. We actually looked at over 200 data points, throughout this entire evaluation to come up with what we felt was, kind of the leaders in the marketplace, and what those leaders had. So, that's kind of how we did this. And then, and as you can see, this is what we came up with. IDC has a methodology where we look at the capabilities, the technical capabilities, the business capabilities and things like that, as opposed to the strategic components. Where are they going? What kinds of, how do they provide advice and things like that to their customers? How do they, what is their strategy for growth? What is their strategy for, moving forward in the market? So you combine all those things, and that's how we, came up with those 200, identification. And, in the case of Avamo, we rated you folks as a leader with your conversationalized solution, because you're offering natural language processing capabilities, which were really excellent, for when we heard from your customers, as well as your speech recognition capabilities and your multilingual capabilities, across a variety of text and voice-based channels. It was really a pleasure to kind of evaluate that from that standpoint. Now, obviously every vendor has, challenges and things along that line. And because Avamo and all these other vendors are, as you mentioned, operating in a very crowded market space, it's really, incumbent upon folks like yourselves to figure out, well, how do I get the word out to those potential customers, and how do I get the information out? But overall, we rated Avamo as a leader in this overall MarketScape evaluation.
Cool. Thank you, Dave. We really appreciate it, and kudos to the engineering and product team for really kind of putting together the conversational platform and really getting us that. So appreciate the kudos, Dave.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, it's at this point it's all fact based and very very cut and dried at this point. So.
All right, right. So, I did wanted to spend some time just talking about what we are doing in the enterprise and, what we are seeing as a part of, as a part of our customers as well. And hopefully, the audience will find it interesting. So, when we started off Avamo, our main goal was, how do we automate conversations in the enterprise? Whether this is customers, whether this is employees, whether this is partners who are coming in, whether asking an IT question on Microsoft Teams or calling in via their phone, we wanted to kind of automate all these kinds of conversations happening in the enterprise. And we're really excited because it's been about 4 years in this whole exercise, and we are starting to see some real results of automation. And you look at the numbers, the business workflows become very important for us. And we really believe for a technology like this to succeed in the enterprise, we have to automate these business flows. And what I mean by that is these are, users coming in and asking questions about, status of their order, or they are putting in a request for provisioning software, or they are coming in and wanting to schedule an appointment with their primary care physicians. All these are business workflows that involve a sequence of steps, that involve integration into a backend application, whether it's an SAP supply chain application, whether it is a Workday HR application, or whether it is Epic for EHR. All these are business workflows, and we really focus on automating these workflows. And this really translates into what we call as value realization, and every organization who's adopting this technology has different metrics for value realization. And we are seeing some of these. One is number of calls getting automated without any kind of user intervention. The user calls in and there is no live agent involved, and the whole call is getting automated end to end. And we are doing quite a few of those every year. And the second metric that we are seeing is the number of minutes that are saved for the agent. And this is a very important productivity measure for the agent, so that they can now spend their time in doing other judgment intensive tasks and have the virtual agent take care of a lot of other kinds of use cases. So this is kind of what we are seeing in terms of driving some of these conversations in the enterprise. And we are also very excited because the kinds of companies that are adopting our technology are the biggest and probably some of the well-run companies in the world. And most of these companies are taking our platform to deploy not just for one use case, but for multiple use cases. And we see there are kind of 3 key drivers to this. First and foremost is the tooling. And we talked about this earlier on, and some of these things that you alluded to, David, which is, how do you get everybody in the organization, non-technical people, business owners, product managers, content people, to get involved in every aspect of the life cycle of virtual agent, all the way from design to production and post-production. And we look at our tooling almost like, a multi-layer. It's like peeling the layers of an onion. You start off with a simple low-code, no-code environment for getting everybody onboarded. But if the ML person wants to get involved, the engineer wants to get involved to create their own ML models, we do have those tooling in place as well. And it's important, we want to be able to cater to the various different users in the organization. The second key factor for us is the speed to deployment. And you mentioned it too. How do you build out a very rich, intelligent virtual agent and still be able to deploy it in a matter of weeks, and sometimes matter of days, right? And for that, we have created this notion of enterprise scale, where the idea behind an enterprise scale is really simplifying what it takes to build it. And also checking a lot of boxes, whether it is compliance, whether it is security, being able to make sure that these enterprises are successful means that we are able to check a lot of these boxes. Now, I'll talk about a couple of use cases here in the contact center. This one is for one of our customers who are automating call scheduling and rescheduling coming in. And for this particular customer, the most important thing, and we believe for this use case to succeed, there are three key elements, and that's kind of reflective of a lot of our contact center customers. First and foremost is work well with existing contact center infrastructure. Whether you're a Cisco customer, whether you're using Genesys, whether you're using NICE, whether you're using Mitel, whatever might be your contact center stack, we want to make sure that there is no rip and replace. Be tightly integrated to your existing contact center. So when the user calls into your 1-800 number and presses 3, instead of it getting passed to an agent, now a virtual agent picks it up. And being able to automate as much of that use case as much as possible so that most of those calls get completely deflected by the virtual agent. And the second important thing is not providing you not just with a very high quality voice synthesis, but also really understanding what the user is saying. It's a very complex field. Users come in and ask questions in so many different ways, so many different accents, so many different dialects, so many different ways of saying the same thing, even something like scheduling and rescheduling. And being able to handle that, being able to handle to provide a very high level of accuracy, and being able to help them analyze what has happened over a period of time so that we can continue to fine tune it. And as I said, the value is important, having value realization and having the customers come in and see, what did they get out of this solution? How are they able to justify an ROI? How are they able to tie this back to business benefits is important. And that's another thing that we really focus on. Now, the second use case that I want to talk about is also in the contact center. And this is for a large healthcare provider. And the interesting thing that we did for them is, this is during the early days of vaccination scheduling. And the biggest challenge for them was getting their patients scheduled to get vaccinated. So what we did for them is help them create outbound campaigns. And the achievement here, and something that we're really proud of, is we were able to, using our technology, reach 750,000 patients across 12 different states in 7 different languages and bring them in to schedule their vaccinations. And one of the things that we were able to do is, and given time was not our friend, and these are kinds of use cases where we needed to go live very quickly. Within a matter of couple of weeks, a matter of days, we were able to actually go from concept to go live and being able to hit all these 750,000 patients. And again, in terms of value measurement, what we saw was double-digit conversions, which is unheard of in outbound programs, right? Again, we are really kind of proud of not just building a great technology, but being able to take this technology and apply for all these different kinds of use cases. Now, we don't have time to go through a lot of different use cases, but if you go to the next slide, what we are seeing is really an explosion of use cases across a variety of different, constituents. So if you look at this heat map and you look at the y-axis, which is basically listing out different use cases, and you look at the x-axis, which is kind of the business value. And if you had asked me 18 months before, a lot of use cases were around virtual customer assistant and maybe some enterprise assistants. And a lot of those use cases were focused on 24/7 support and improving operational efficiency. Now, what we are seeing is much deeper use cases for customer assistance that go all the way from improving customer satisfaction to providing for ways by which we can onboard these kinds of customers. And similarly for the employee facing use cases, we are seeing an explosion of use cases for IT assistants as well as HR assistants, right? And being able to provide for these kinds of use cases and helping our customers get that value faster is something that we really focused on. Now, which brings me to the next point that I wanted to ask you, Dave, which is, I'm sure a lot of customers are coming, as we go through the sales cycle with our customers, business justification for a platform comes up where they are able to see what this product can do for them. They're able to kind of, unearth the use cases. The question often comes as, how do we put a business justification together? How do we kind of, define ROI? How do you kind of, take this up the chain so that we can start to get this project together? So would love to hear from you in terms of IDC's view and what you have seen in terms of business justification for conversational AI.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sherm. Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of interest in business justification for these kinds of popular use cases. And, interestingly enough, we've also done some survey work here in terms of what are popular, conversational use cases. And what we've been finding, for example, is that one of the easiest ones is IT automation. That it just makes sense. The IT help desks are overwhelmed and have been overwhelmed for a long time now.
Yeah.
And with all the issues that are going on and things like that around, cybersecurity and changes in the operating systems and changes in other things, it makes total sense that IT automation, is one of the most, interesting use cases for a lot of organizations. And it's one that's easy to get started with because you can actually have a lot of the answers there, and you don't necessarily have to put a human person into the loop to be able to answer a lot of questions and actually deflect a lot of calls, automatically using a conversational AI solution. In addition to those, the automated customer service agents and the sales process and recommendation automation are popular from our standpoint. And I think that showed when you were just showing your examples of those customer service agents that you were doing. So, in terms of justifying the cost of these, for externally facing solutions, it's actually quite, easy to justify the cost and the potential return on investment. A lot of it comes down to, many organizations are already tracking customer support logs. They're tracking time to resolution. They're tracking call deflection rates and things like that. So, the ability to put a conversational AI solution in place that increases those call deflections or provides support across multiple channels so that you get increased customer satisfaction, it is actually quite easy to do. I think the key there is making sure that you have those KPIs that you're planning on measuring.
Mm-hmm.
You have those ready, before you put the solution in place, and then, work with a conversational AI solution vendor who actually can help you measure the increases in those KPIs. And one thing we haven't really talked too much about is the actual tools and analysis capabilities for monitoring the conversational AI solutions. And I think those are some of the key aspects, to helping you justify the cost and developing, potential return on investment. The same thing is true in the sales and marketing solutions. Although there you've got, how much are you improving things like lead generation and qualification? Are you getting better quality leads? Is that working out to an increased amount of revenue per lead that you're looking at? Those things are actually quite easy to measure, the before and after. And a lot of the existing systems that conversational AI vendors like yourself tie into, like Salesforce or, other types of CRM packages have a lot of those capabilities built in. So you can actually use that to help you, justify the cost and develop your, potential ROI model. I think the other thing is that's important here is that vendors like yourself have a wealth of information available for these customers to look at, and can give you can help give you some idea. And I'm also sure that you folks are working with other third-party, consulting firms and services firms, to provide that level of justification as well. Internally facing solutions are a little bit harder to justify because, it comes down to things like the faster resolution of a service ticket or the improved productivity of the IT support staff, the ability to handle, 1,000 more calls a month without having to increase the staff, because of the conversationalized solution. I think those are the kinds of metrics that we're seeing people use into those internal solutions. In terms of things like HR support or now, digital assistants and things like that, it really comes down to improved productivity and enhanced employer satisfaction or employee satisfaction. So, those are some of the areas to be thinking about. I don't know if you've come across any additional ones, Sriram, that we might want to talk about, but those are the ones that we heard a lot from those 40 odd customers when we did that evaluation.
No, I think these are all great points, and what you said earlier is really important, which is and we recommend this to all our customers, which is before you get started off on a use case, identifying upfront what business metrics are you driving towards, right? Whether it is reducing the time it takes for your users to get to where they're looking for. So a support ticket, which typically takes anywhere from 3 to 4 hours, are we going to reduce the support tickets? Are you going to reduce the volume of tickets coming in for your agent? Is it improved customer satisfaction? Whatever that metrics might be. And we have helped, we have a customer success team that helps our customers identify some of these business benefits and identifying it, and as you said, tracking it. As we go through the use case, as we start having more users on the system, trying it out, how do we track it and how do we report back becomes really critical. And we do see a lot of both external use cases and internal use cases as well. For internal use cases, especially employee self-service, we are seeing a big jump there, primarily because of, most companies are still remote. There is a lot of, stress on the support staff to provide for faster resolution. And this is where the virtual assistants are really helping, especially taking on the initial set of use cases around, the tickets that could be answered through knowledge base. So we focus a lot on ticket resolution, not just simplifying how tickets are getting created in your ServiceNow or in your Zendesk or whatever ITSM system you might have, but how do we use existing knowledge to resolve these tickets becomes important. And in some of these cases, especially when an organization is large, when you have 50, 60, 100,000 employees, the justification becomes a lot more easier because you get a lot of those kinds of questions that get answered up front. But all good points, Dave, and really appreciate your insights in terms of, helping our customers, helping our prospects to understand, how to think about conversational AI, how to think about, the use cases as well as, the cost benefits and justification of the solution.
Yeah. No, this is a market where I think we're just going to see incredible growth over the next several years, because, so many of these kind of capabilities, in terms of customer service or in terms of, internal solutions, things like that. There's so many mundane questions and so many mundane types of things that it's going to free up customer service people. It's going to free up internal support people to do the more advanced problem solving. So the conversational AI solutions are really, kind of this next generation of tools to help people get through their day more quickly, easily, and more productively.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't have summarized it better. Skand, given where we are, do we want to just open up for questions?
Sure, Shriram. I think right time. I saw a lot of them coming through, so I'm trying to just bridge them together so that we are able to cover as many of them as possible over the next few minutes. But firstly, thank you again, both of you, for the insights. I'm going to echo what Shriram just mentioned. A lot of good advice and insights into how to approach conversational AI solutions, what to look out for, how to manage some of the challenges that other buyers have faced in the journey so far. On that note, the first question I'm gonna bring up is, we have talked about use cases, business case, build up, and vendor selection. What and how should one approach post-deployment scenario? I think the issue of business metrics and what to measure should be done upfront. But beyond that, are there any best practices, Dave, that you'd like to share with our audience besides what we have already discussed so far?
I think the first thing to do is as we've talked about, conversational AI solutions are built on top of knowledge bases. They're built on top of the ability to handle question and answers and things like that. So I think, assessing what knowledge you have internally that you can use for that information, is a good first step. I think the other part of it is to understand what channels do you want this solution to work on? Do you want it to work on your website? Do you want it to work on your phone lines in place of your IVR system? Do you want it to open up Facebook Messenger, or do you want to open it up to your, internal Slack channels? So I think, understanding those things and preparing for that, before you bring the vendors in is an important aspect to this. I think the other aspect of it is, what languages do you want to support? What domains do you feel that this needs to work in? So for example, Sriram talked about the healthcare domain. Do you need the system to know things about people's body temperatures? Do you need to know things about scheduling appointments, for a healthcare provider? Those are all, questions that I think you should be thinking about as you put together. What I would suggest, is maybe like at least a small or the beginnings of a request for information for the various vendors that you're going to go out and talk to.
Yeah, all good points. And based on our experience, what we have seen is, going live with your virtual agent is just, I would say, you've got to about halfway there. The real learning start from that point onwards. We've seen time and time again that when the virtual agent goes live, the kinds of questions users ask, the kinds of expectations that the user have from the virtual agent tends to be a lot of times very different, right? And the first few weeks are essential to kind of gauge that, and more importantly, make sure that the virtual agent learns and is able to respond better. And we have seen that. You've seen that, a few times over, where, there are certain intents that were not necessarily trained for, that the virtual agent was, in future trained for. For instance, we had an insurance customer in Asia where it turns out the most common question that the insurance assistant was asked was more about, support for parents as part of their health insurance. And they kind of changed the way the flow was constructed to handle that question up front and really improve the overall kind of, conversion for those kinds of virtual agents. So don't think going live is the end of it. That's pretty much in a lot of cases the starting point.
Yeah. I completely 100% agree with that, Sriram. And having the vendor have that ability to change and add additional intents, add additional questions easily and capabilities, I think is important. The other thing I was going to mention is that if you're doing a customer service application, for example, chances are you already have a log of questions and answers that is sitting somewhere on somebody's hard drive. Okay, so grab that, and start using that as a place to start. The same thing if you're talking about an IT help desk. You'll see the kinds of questions that you're getting in. Those are great indicators to tell you this is where we're going to want to start to automate.
Yeah. Great. Skan?
Great. Yeah. No, I was just looking at the set of questions coming in. The next one is, what are the top challenges that your customers are seeing as they look to scale at large enterprises? And this is for you, Sriram.
Yeah, I think the large enterprises, the challenges have always been, I think, first is the use case. I think identifying the right use case to us has been the biggest challenge for enterprises. And our recommendations have always been, identify use case where you can define the value up front, you can define what this is going to do for you. And a lot of those is really kind of, helping to kind of, funnel and identify the right use case. That's number one. The second tends to be integrations, connectivity, things that, David alluded to. And, we have the infrastructure in place to connect to a lot of business applications, but, sometimes it's not just connectivity. It's about compliance. It's about accessibility in terms of, who can access, how can they access. Is it working on behalf of the user, or is it a system user accessing it? What kind of data should be accessed? Is it read, write? So a lot of times there is a lot of discussion between, the owner of the application, if it's an SAP application or a Workday or a PeopleSoft, and making sure those endpoints are ready. And having those discussions up front really, really help. So, and the third kind of, thing that we have seen is really making sure that, we provide the appropriate tooling so that there is a sense of expectation in terms of, how the experience is constructed. And the experience becomes important, where, a lot of times we've seen projects where the stakeholders don't get to see how the experience looks like till pretty much closer to go live. But somehow, if you're able to accelerate a lot of these things up front, where if it's a voice assistant or even a text-based assistant, getting to know what the conversational experience looks like, having a broader set of people experience that up front to feed back into how the bot can be much more natural, can be much more immersive in experience, is going to go a long way. So that to us is kind of, what we would recommend as one, make sure you have the right use case with well-defined business justification. The second thing is, connectivity, make sure like the applications can be connected. And the third thing is the experience, making sure that, you have the stakeholders involved in every step of the way so that feedback comes in. I don't know, Dave, if you want to add more to what you have seen.
Yeah, well, one of the things that when we talk to these customers, some of them are very, very large enterprises. And one of the things that's actually very interesting is that a lot of the largest organizations are now trying to deal with the success of their conversational agents. So, what happens is they put one or two of these conversational AI solutions in place, and all of a sudden they're getting requests for 10 or 20 or 30 more of these solutions. And a lot of the organizations don't have the bandwidth, to do that right now.
And they are
So I
not
think-
able to also decide, is this even a right use case, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important part, but I think looking for a vendor that has a low code and no code solution that allows business users and business analysts and subject matter experts to actually develop or prototype the solutions is a key component of this to really spreading these conversational AI solutions throughout a large enterprise, because there just isn't enough software developers in the IT department to do all that work.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Skand, maybe you have time for maybe one more question?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. And it kind of melts very well with the point you guys are making right now. And the question is, what are the innovations and new capabilities that industry is seeking in conversational AI space? Let me add another one that came to my mind as I was listening you guys. What is the biggest challenge that one needs to solve proactively as you look into the next 5 years for conversational AI? So I'm adding two things. One is the innovation and capability piece. The other is challenge beyond the capability and innovation that one needs to kind of think about as you think of growing in the conversational AI space and the expansion that we are witnessing in this space.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, happy to start. And I think one of the things that's fueled the impetus for this conversational AI solution in the first place has been the rapid improvement of natural language processing models. We've seen natural language processing models go to be much more sophisticated and much more capable over the last 3 to 4 years. And I don't think it's stopping anytime soon. Lots of organizations are really looking to continue to increase the sophistication and the capability of those language models. And I think that's going to allow us to create more accurate and better conversational AI solutions going forward. So I think that's a really big part of it. I think the other part of it is, and I don't want to give this short shrift, but really having the right answers, really understanding what are the solutions to specific problems, really gets at the heart of mining information, mining discovery, and basically building up those knowledge bases. So I think there's going to be a lot of innovations in automatically building those knowledge bases where you're not going to have to, handcraft question and answer pairs and things like that going forward. So, I mean, I think those are probably two of the biggest innovations that I see, in the conversational AI solutions market over the next couple of years. Sreem, I don't know if you agree with that or have.
Yeah, I kind of agree. If you, to me, if you take a baseball metaphor, we are like in innings 1, right? And you take a cricket metaphor, you are like in the first innings of a test match. So it's early days, right? And we are seeing a lot of interesting use cases, but I think we're still scratching the surface. The models are getting better. The voice understanding is getting better. The use cases are getting more and more sophisticated. As David was saying, you're going beyond a simple Q&A, question and answer pairs, to where we have cognitive search, where you don't need to feed in the question. You just feed in your documents and we're able to find the relevant answers, to connecting to your enterprise applications where you're really having a conversation with your SAP application, but you really are not you're not thinking of it that way. You're asking a question, responses are coming back from your SAP or your Salesforce or your PeopleSoft application. The way we look at this, and some of our larger enterprise customers are also starting to think of this, is really in terms of, hey, can I really automate every piece of conversation in the enterprise? And that's where, we started, and that's where we are headed as well, where you're really not thinking of this in terms of, is it a question and answer? Is it like a multi-turn conversation? Is it involving transactional systems? And sometimes these are questions that involve multiple transactional systems. When we get to the point where a user is able to use, a simple in a primary mode of communication, which is using text or using voice as a means by which they can get whatever information they want, that's when we kind of can say that we have reached somewhere. And I think we are on a very well path towards getting there, but I think we are still ways away from getting there. And the technology is kind of evolving as we speak. I think it's just a matter of time till we get there.
Perfect. All right. Again, thank you so much, Dave and Sriram, for being here and sharing your insights, experience, knowledge with everyone. This has been a really great conversation. I learned a lot over the last 55 odd minutes. And again, the audience, for the thoughtful questions and for staying with us throughout the session. Thank you so much for your time and insights. I know that we haven't been able to answer all the questions, but we'll get back to you offline with any questions that haven't been answered yet. Again, thank you, everyone. Have a nice day, evening. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Thank you.
David.
Thank you.